Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Jordan Stein. I'm a managing director here at Cresset, and I'm excited to kick things off today. This is the first interview in our new Meet the Manager series, which features discussions with venture capital luminaries that we've partnered with through our venture capital funds. While I would expect many of you are probably familiar with Andreesen Horowitz, for those of you who don't know, Andreessen is one of the top venture firms in the world. Founded in 2009 by Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, Andreessen has become synonymous with pioneering investments in the next generation of technology companies. Known for their forward-thinking approach and a deep belief in the transformative power of technology, Andreessen has backed a variety of breakthrough companies in sectors ranging from artificial intelligence, bio and healthcare, consumer, crypto, enterprise, fintech, and many more. We've known Andreessen for a number of years, cementing our relationship with them through an investment into several of their funds in 2022 via our first VC strategy, Cresset Ventures 1. More recently, we're thrilled to say that they've become our very first investment in our latest strategy, Ventures 2, which is currently open to investors. Through Ventures 2, we have exposure to Andreessen's AI strategy, which is what brings us here today. We are excited to have Bryan Kim here, who's a partner at Andreesen Horowitz, where he invests primarily in consumer and application layer AI companies. Today, Bryan also serves on the boards of Be Real and SnackPass. Previously, he was the chief financial officer at Bungalow, where he oversaw finance, business strategy, market expansion, and partnerships. And prior to that, he was at Snap, taking on leadership roles during the company's pivotal hypergrowth, early monetization, and pre- and post-IPO years. As a senior director, he led the growth and product operations team responsible for Snap's user growth and international expansion. And earlier, he built and led the company's finance team from 0 to 70 plus members, quarterbacking multiple funding milestones, including the IPO. He was also a founding strategy team member, having identified, acquired, and helping to integrate Snap's acquisition of Lookersy, which are their Snap AR lenses, and Bitmoji. Prior to that, Bryan was also a founding general partner at Uncommon Projects, an operator-run seed fund. Interviewing Bryan will be my colleague, James Danforth, who co-leads our venture strategy with me. James has nearly 2 decades of experience investing in both VC funds and early-stage companies, and has had a relationship with Andreesen Horowitz dating back to True's first investment in their funds, I think 7 years ago. So without further ado, I'd now like to turn it over to James and to Bryan to chat about the transformative power of artificial intelligence and Andreessen's approach to investing in the AI ecosystem.
Thank you, BK, for joining us. Welcome. We're all very excited to have your insights and hear your insights on AI. As Jordan mentioned, you have an extensive background with startups. What he didn't focus on was the background in investment banking, for which you served 8 years or 9 years as an iBanker, which is somewhat rare to make it then into venture capital and directly into startups. So I'd like to start there because you transitioned from iBanking into Snapchat during their hypergrowth period and then into a public company. Today, the environment is somewhat similar to the hype around social media back then. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience then and how it translates to today and any lessons you can learn or share from your time back then and how it could apply to your investing today.
Of course, James, and thank you for having me here. Great to partner with Cresset. Great to be here and get an opportunity to talk a little bit about, how we view AI investing and my background. You talked about Snap, and it's interesting, when we think about, about 10 plus years ago when Snapchat, when I first joined Snapchat, what have you, it was still pretty early. I would say the team was 150 people. Pre-revenue. It was just after a story product had launched, which is now widely sort of available in many different products. And sort of having gone through really interesting milestones of, going from 150 people to 5,000 people, going from 0 revenue and no idea how to make money into, by the time I left, billion and a half, going from daily active user of 60 million to 400 million today. we've seen a lot of ups and downs, and I think the product stayed somewhat true. And folks might think, oh, Snap, the thing that my kids use. And I don't understand why things disappear. I think that's really interesting, right? When we think about Snap as a product and the prior generations understanding of social products, it should have a feed. I should be able to watch something. It should always be there to, oh, I sent something and it disappeared. Like, why would I do that? It's a similar thing to, today's AI products, and some of the parallels that I see is like, why there's a companion, there's a bot that you can talk to. I have friends. Why would I do that? It's a similar jump in a perception of things and behaviors that were not germane to the prior generation. We're starting to see net new consumer behaviors, and those are the types that we get really excited about. I would say very quickly, 3 things that I learned at Snap. One is that key products that are actually generational and marquee can actually start out as something very, very silly. So Snap started out with disappearing photo, and it started at Stanford, frat campuses because they wanted to send pictures that disappear. Why? God knows what. But that's sort of very silly and easy to overlook. Today, similarly, a lot of the AI product looks like toys. Like, why would I do that? So part one is that key technological difference and growth, as well as new product, can start out as something very silly. Second is that the speed of innovation, the speed of development really, really matters, especially when we have these net new eras, if you will. Let's say Snap is one of the key beneficiaries of mobile era and cloud era. In the AI era that we're in now, the speed of execution, the speed of product is so important because everything changes so quickly. It's easy actually to copy certain things. There are a plethora of open source model that people can use. The only defense against copycats, the only defense against sort of really building a moat today is unfortunately, the speed of execution, and there are founders who know how to do that, founders who don't know how to do that. I think one of the examples that I give at Snap is people think of Snap as like, oh, it's a disappearing photo messaging app. That is only product number 1. And that grew like, probably to 20 million daily active users. That's great. And then story product launched. Now, all of a sudden, you can actually stitch together a video. That's a catapulting difference in innovation. That product format is now ubiquitous everywhere, even including LinkedIn. Second era, or second stage of the growth. The third is you start adding AR layer into your face and enable everyone to kind of use it and have fun with the product. Another sort of layer of growth. And as you can see, these key innovation in the product journey really mattered. The last one I would say is no amount of marketing can ever fix a product. So really, and it applies to AI as well, no amount of hype or word of mouth can really fix the product. Your product better be very retentive, very good, really deliver some value to your customers early on and again and again. So that thesis, if you will, continues on very relatable to the new crop of companies that we're very focused on these days.
Great answer. That makes a ton of sense. I'd like to take a step back and, given the new technology, breakthroughs we've seen lately in AI, I want to take a step back and define for our audience what AI means to you. What is involved in your scope in looking at AI and what it means to you.
Yeah, maybe this will be a little bit of a lengthy answer or story, if you will, because there's a couple of ways of looking at AI. One way is to focus on the technical aspects, right? How many flops is it doing? What type of chips does it use? How does it get training? What are the modality of it? So there are all those. I think it's probably interesting for the audience here in Cresset team to talk really about more of the economic overview of AI. What does that mean economically? Because if you think about technical side, despite the narrative of AI summers and winters, this thing has been making continuous progress in the last 70 years. It's sort of not new technology necessarily. And along the way, it actually did solve a lot of problems. You can imagine when the AI beat a Russian chess player, right? A game playing, or when the car driving started to happen. AI has actually solved many interesting problems even before the sort of the waterfall or the watershed moment of ChatGPT or OpenAI sort of emergence as one of the leading figure there. When we think of the underlying technology of AI, it actually already surpasses human on many basic tasks, whether it's perception, whether it's speech recognition, image recognition, handwriting recognition. There are basic tasks that AI is already very good at. So why hasn't that resulted in a giant opportunity previously? And we think it's because at that point of time, the capability of AI didn't quite match up with the economic upside that is available to startups, particularly. And so, the way to think about it, and the way I'll draw this picture, is there's like a the current generative AI era of products where it was useful, but there had like four sort of factors that impacted that for them not to be able to make a great economic case for startups specifically. And one is that there are many dazzling use cases, but it applied to niche markets, right? Again, like Russian chess player beating is like interesting and very fun, but not directly applicable to businesses. Second, slightly nuanced, is that when let's say a lot of times correctness matters. Like if I'm looking at like a business use case, I want it to actually not hallucinate and tell me bogus answers, is made up. And the real world, the tail of the answer is actually very long and very fat. So when the correctness matters and the cost of delivering these answers for AI is very high, it doesn't end up quite applying very well. The third is that hardware mattered, right? Like we figured out that GPU graphical units were actually, it was made by NVIDIA to serve games product, happened to be very good at serving AI. But even aside from the underlying chips, a lot of times what people wanted to do is build industrial robots or physical security. And these hardware type products are very hard for startups to get the capital for. The last thing I would say is, prior generation, where the competition is human brain. Human brain is pretty darn good at a lot of stuff, especially when it comes to perception. So now, one might ask, like, what did that lead to? The prior generation of AI products, as we look at it, we call it like the AI mediocrity spiral. And what that means is, oh, AI is so cool. This is very new. Like, so AI is hard. And then you have humans in the loop, which actually ends up being quite expensive. And then you take investors' money. Investors want growth. AI is still hard. Therefore, you hire more humans. Therefore, you continue that cycle, which ends up being pretty difficult margin profile for a lot of startups to muster. An example might be Robotaxi. James, I know you're in e-space, so I'm sure you're seeing Waymos going around, and I've taken Waymos. But even before that, if you think about the unit economics of how that works, it actually, various different venture capital, what have you, have plowed in $75 billion in the ecosystem. And the unit economics is still not as cheap as Uber. So what does that tell? Like that sort of our lesson from that is that, look, it's not that technology cannot be built. It's that building the business for the startup based on that technology is hard. So now AI today, as we understand it, going back to your original question of what is this sort of AI, why is it different, is that we think this is very, very, very different. And so the reason is, and part one is that large language models, which are called LLMs, like ChatGPT or Gemini from Google or Anthropic, you now have these new generative AI models, and what that does is translates a natural language into anything. It can give you an answer in text. It can give you an image. It can give you a song. It can give you a video. It can give you a 3D model. Essentially, if you think about it, it can give you everything, and this is a funny way to think about it, everything you would need to build a great video game. 3D models, character, voices, music, story, textures, everything you can now create with the generative AI technology at near marginal cost of zero. So then what actually happened is And the way we see it today is there are three major applications of this new emergence of products. Creativity. So think of Midjourney or 11 Labs of the world, where you can prompt it and amazing image, amazing audio sample shows up. Companionship. It happens to be three C's. So creativity, companionship, and co-pilot. Companionship. I am, the younger generation is only as ever, and we may not understand that behavior, but some of the, children of our partners who are in middle school are having group chat with character AI, with their real friends, real human friends, as well as a couple of characters that are generated by AI. You may ask, well, why would they do that? I will tell you, I also don't know. But customers are correct, and they are doing it, and it's adding value to their life. So we're seeing that. The third one is Copilot, where there is a little bit of human review, human in the loop for a bunch of different tasks, like Perplexity or any of the engineering side. So then, last thing I would say is what this really changed is it changed the product such that you can actually generate an incredible amount of economic use case on top of the historically incredibly fast adoption. So think of ChatGPT as a consumer product. The time to reach 1 million users, fastest in history of consumer products. If you think about Stable Diffusion, which is an open source model that enables image generation, and how developers actually adopted that, fastest time in history, even compared to Web3 product like Ethereum or what have you. So now you have this case of killer economics combined with historically fast adoption of technology. So then what you have is, you remember I talked about 4 things of the previous generation, why it didn't work. Instead of niche, it applies to mass market, many, many, many different markets. Instead of correctness mattering, if you're creating creativity, there's no correct music, there's no correct image, right? You may have 6 fingers, that may not be a correct image, but aside from that, and that's fixed, there's no correctness starts to matter a lot less, and that may be actually an asset. The use cases of these products are now software. They're not really hardware. So it doesn't suffer from the curse of the margin of the hardware necessarily. And as for the brain, it turns out, and we'll talk a little bit about what AGI is or what have you, but it's already better at doing a lot of different things than human. That includes around language and creativity. So now, in summary, I think where we think about this is this new epoch of AI has basically reduced the cost of creativity to 0. And honestly, imagination really is a limit. And you have this place where, for the first time, this crazy AI technology that everyone used to talk about in the last 7 years is now actually getting adopted by the mass in historically fast, even faster than any of the mobile products before, combined with monetization. They can make money and have the killer economics. So we're now seeing an emergence of a lot of companies tackling this, and this is why we're so excited about what's coming next and how we're organized to stay on top of that wave.
Great answer. I would argue creativity, it's tough to define the AI's production of an iteration as creativity right now, but you're right in that it is taking creative form. I'd like to focus on what you focus on, which is the use cases. So let's dive a little bit deeper into creativity and Copilot and the use cases for AI. We all know it's revolutionized chat, but let's go deeper. What are you excited about for use cases?
Yeah, so I guess there isn't a single use case that I'm very excited about. I think overall, the way we think about this emergence of AI, especially related to use cases that you said, James, is we have the thesis of abundance. And what that means is that now with a new technology, things that people couldn't afford before, it exists, but they couldn't afford before, now all of a sudden becomes accessible. Having a secretary, EA, that schedules everything and writes out your email for you, not possible. It was very expensive. And it's akin to the ages of Uber. When Uber came about, people were like, that's a dumb thing. Like, why would anybody think a black car market is large enough to pour in venture dollars? Well, it turns out with mobile and the ubiquity of the mobile mobile devices and location tracking, all of a sudden anybody can have a black car, even better, delivered to you on a moment's notice. Like that completely changes the equation. That brings in abundance. So now what we're seeing is, in the case of a lot of different use cases, we're seeing an age of abundance, whether it's really around creation, editing, or whether it's around, feeling connected to other people, or whether it's around having the best access to the best doctors or best teachers in the world. So those are some of the use cases that only one can imagine. And let's actually even, like, I'll just take one and maybe dive into that. So let's just talk about creation and creativity maybe. Even within that, what does that mean? Well, as we talked about, it's a way to, one way we approach this is, imagine a AAA game. AAA just means like a very high quality game that takes years and years and years to make. Now, it used to cost, I don't know, an order of like hundreds of millions of dollars in many years to create an amazing game like Call of Duty. Okay. But now you have 3D models that are enabled by Unity. You have characters you can create very easily by MetaHuman or character AI. Voices can be delivered through 11 Labs. You don't need to go find a voice actor to voice out every single interaction of the NPC non-playable characters in the game anymore. You have that for free, well, nearly free. It's very cheap. And instead of coming and going to get Hans Zimmer to write a score for your games, you have, you have the likes of Suno AI or Udio, which is one of our companies, where you just type in, give me cinematic battle scene music, and it'll just give you that music. You don't need, like, so as you think about the cost and time and effort that related to every single one of these, you are seeing orders of magnitude improvement. And when that happens, I think the ability, and that's why we think the era of abundance is here, where the actual choice and selection and what to actually do first will matter even more, because it's just so, the quality bar becomes so high. And again, like, I'll just take another example of education. Now, public education has standardized system, and they're trying to personalize a little more with, oh, the kid's not very good at math, we'll give you more STEM education, we'll have more behavioral, more of that. But imagine a truly personalized education where it not just, oh, you're a math level this, math level that, but they know exactly what subject you need help on, and none of that incremental education for a person to get to that another level costs anything. And so when we think about that as education, and when you think about health even, nowadays, how many people have access to the state-of-the-art high-end doctors? We know and back the company where it's co-founded by one of the doctors who charges somewhere in between like 30K to 50K to just see a patient. And his wait list is multi-year long. Like, most people can't see that. But what if you can actually load up some of your personal records and get a quality of level and attention and sort of an advice that you get from this high-end doctor at, again, orders of magnitude less of a cost, time, and effort. So what we get really excited about is that this technology innovation actually applies to almost every aspect of our lives. It is applying to the software layer. We're starting to see more robotics, but right now it's applying to a lot of the software layer, where already the marginal cost of the software product is very, very favorable. And layer that onto this sort of AI technology, I think we only expect to see more and more growth on the application layer on an everyday use cases that really takes advantage of this change.
Great answer. And nice little pitch for your games fund as well while we're in there, which we also just invested into. You mentioned, the large language models like, that OpenAI and Anthropic are built on. We've seen startups build companies on top of these large language models and then get disintermediated as OpenAI goes direct to consumer. There's the competition from the underlying large language model company, as well as Google and Microsoft, who already have, the data and the distribution of existing customers. how do startups compete in this intensely competitive environment?
Of course, it is different a little bit compared to the mobile era, isn't it? Before, the large incumbents might see it. I'm like, oh, we don't need those silly things, and they'll sit out of it for a while and wait until it's too late. And obviously, Clayton Christensen's like innovator dilemma applies even today and before. But now, I think you see the likes of Google and Microsoft like really embrace the new technologies. In fact, actually, the Transformer paper came out of Google
Yep.
4 or 5 years ago. So they were actually the ones who built the thing.
And
And
then they left to start their own startups, right?
That's absolutely, yep, that is exactly right. UDO team that we backed for music, exactly the ones who built the best-in-class Google Music product internally. And Character AI of Noam of the world, of course, came out of, he was one of the main authors of the Attention is All You Need paper, which actually started the Transformer, the T part of the GPT.
Yep.
What's interesting is you also have the likes of Microsoft, right? Who Satya recently said to their board, I believe, to look like OpenAI is very impressive, yes, but we're over them, under them, around them. We have it. So I think what you are seeing is the incumbents being very aggressive. Meta just released Llama 3 today,
Yep.
which is their latest open source model. And if someone had told me 5 years ago when Snap was intensely competing with Meta, that one day they're going to have the best-in-class open source model, best-in-class model, and they're going to actually open it up to the world, I would have said, no way. That is not them. That's not how it works. But we are seeing that. So, I think the world is a little different where, the incumbents, quote unquote, are open-eyed, clear-eyed about this. Now, in terms of how startups can compete, if you will, is that it's interesting. A lot of the use cases that startups have that we talked about, and this goes back to, initial application can be quite silly and expand from that. That applies to the current world too. Like the overall LLM, the generality of what they're doing is, we're going to build this amazing large model and plow in billions of dollars that's going to be very general and good. That's true. And there are certain use cases where that is dangerous, right? If you're a startup directly competing with, hey, I'm going to summarize this text really well for you. Well, that's dangerous because the actual large language model that these people are building are actually really, really good at that. However, if your model is based on, you know what is not publicly really available and really useful is all the therapist notes of talking to patients. Nobody has that data. I have access to that, and I'm going to figure out a way to load the said large language model, fine-tune it, and fine-tuning it just means layer it on with a very specific purpose, where I'm going to fine-tune it with my therapist notes, therefore making it the best model possible for talking to potential clients and patients about their mental health. Now, that is a very simple use case that cannot be covered widely by all these generic models. What that means is there are two ways that economic value will accrue. One is that by providing the API to the amazing model that they built, they will actually start making money. The other layer is because you're providing such a useful service to the end customers, you are also going to make money. So I don't no longer think in a world where, oh, incumbents are all going to win and all the value is going to accrue there. I think the value chain actually will accrue at both places. One of the interesting thing to think about on the underlying model layer, however, is the ROI of the dollar spent. This is a kind of an interesting way to think about it, where each version of the model, whether it's GPT-4 going to 5 or what have you, each jump costs tens of billions, like billions of dollars. It's interesting in that the effort isn't necessarily cumulative, i.e. the dollar you spend to train GPT-3, for example, let's hypothetically say they spend $1 billion. GPT-3 probably is useful and widely used for about a year and a half before the next version of model comes out. And then what do? You deprecate it. Mm-hmm. You spend billions of dollars building the thing that now is deprecated. One can argue, well, but that gives you a leg up to train the GPT-4. Not really. The incremental cost of actually training for GPT-4 is a couple-fold of the initial GPT-3. Therefore, you just actually spend billions of dollars, training that thing that got deprecated in a year. So the case for that is that you would need to believe that one of these players truly, truly win out on the generalized model layer that becomes a runaway winner. So that's part one. And the second thing that I think about on the application layer that we talked about is the truth is, James, the ground is shifting. Every other week, there's a new video model. Every other week, there's a new avatar model. Every other week, there's a new music model. And every other week, the model that you see is state of the art, which is 20% better than the next. And so ground is shifting underneath, especially if you're in an application layer and you're building on top of the infra layer and that keeps on shifting. You need to be very nimble. And you need to also, so I think what we're seeing is entrepreneurs who understand the underlying technological shift, knows what's best, but also marries it to the customer use case, understands that really well, are the ones who are generating tremendous value today.
I think we're going to open it up for questions in about 5 minutes. So I want to do a couple quick hitters here. Now, many of the people on the call are investors in our fund and therefore investors in Andreessen. What I'd like to do is highlight some of the portfolio companies that you guys have in the space that you're really excited about. You mentioned several already, Character AI, 11 Labs, which our clients probably are not, intimately familiar with. I'd love for you to highlight just some of your favorite portfolio companies, if you can.
Absolutely. I happy to do that. I think there are a couple, right? And we invest across different layers of AI business, if you will. We recently invested in a company called Mistral. And it's a French company who's building the state-of-the-art, the best open source model that is on Apache 2, which is the most permissive license for everyone to build upon and make money upon. It's a classic open source model similar to the Linux and the Red Hat of the world. This team was the best team out of Llama, that the version 3 that Meta just launched. These are the folks who built the Llama 1, Llama 2, and came out and built Mistral. We're very, very excited about that because as we think about the underlying layer, as we talked about, James, there's a tremendous shift in how people think about the underlying model. The smaller the model, the faster to run, the best in class and cheaper. Like Mistral is actually achieving all of that and making it accessible to all the developers in the world. What that would mean to us is that we actually are invested in a layer of a company that gives the superpowers to all the application layer companies for free and open source today. So we are very excited about that. And on the application layer, I would say we have the likes of, I'm an investor from the seed and A and B, series seed and A and B, in a company called Captions. So what do they do? Well, one way to think about it is the lingua franca of today's internet is video. And it's interesting. It used to be like, video had to have a topic, a subject, like a kid dancing, a cat moving, or what have you. But now more and more, the main video type that we see is talking videos, talking faces, just like we are today. This is a video and we're talking faces. A lot of times what now is interesting is because so many of the videos on mobile is played default sound off, 50% plus of the videos on mobile is played sound off. The rise of captions is now quite important. And this is a very simple company that started with a premise of, the talking videos is really a thing. I'm going to bridge how people watch these videos by enabling captions using AI. So if I'm looking elsewhere, what it does, it'll actually fix my eyeball, put it back here so that I actually look like I'm focusing. I'm not using it right now. It'll also, give you the captions of everything that we're saying. If I said something like a firework, it'll actually pop up an emoji in the video itself, enabling a really interactive and fun video experience. And that now they're tackling an overall video creation editing suite. Think of Canva for video. So now what we have are a lot of the ways that Caption Founder is enabling that is by utilizing the state-of-the-art underlying model, whether it's Mistral or 11 Labs that enable voice generation at ease. So we now are seeing all of these companies that come together. And one of the ways we think about, you mentioned incumbents versus startups. We're a venture fund. We're in the business of backing founders. We're in the business of backing startups. If we believe incumbents will take away all the prize, like there's like, what are we even doing here? So one of the things that we're really excited about, and the reason why we're excited about the likes of Mistral, 11 Labs, and the infrastructural layer, captions, and what have you on the application layer, is that together is sort of what we think of for the Star Wars fans out there. That's the rebel ship. We are in the business of backing rebels. And, they're all coming together, and we're very, very excited about some of these names.
Fair enough. You guys are a very well-known venture firm, but these deals for Mistral, for example, are very competitive because they're known as the best open source LLM right now, short for large language model. How are you guys winning these deals?
Yeah, it's couple things. We are founded by former founders, right? Mark was the one who founded Netscape, which ushered in the Internet 1.0 era, what have you. And the reason, the founding thesis of our fund is that we're building a venture firm that founders, Mark and Ben, wish they had back then, that are actually helpful, that are actually in the service of them, that won't fire the CEO, that will help them actually level up and get to the next point and IPO and beyond. So we modeled ourselves after what would be most helpful for our founders. How do we make them win? How do we put the proverbial finger on the scale against the competition? So, one of the things that I think is very important for a lot of investors to understand is that the era of VC sitting down and saying, oh, why don't you pitch me your idea? Let me select you and I'll give you money. That's gone. It's became very, very clear that the software has eaten the work. It became clear that there is a tremendous amount of upside in software, and therefore a lot of capital went into venture. What that meant was it became a very competitive field. Therefore, what has happened is the best-in-class founders, the best products, are actually in the choosing spot. The power is not with us. Like, it doesn't matter if a16z is a very large and well-known brand. The power is with the best-in-class founders. They have the ability to choose. So when again, as limited partners and investors, as you think about, oh, where should I give my money to as a general partner or partnership, is that, do these guys know how to win, and why would they win? So I would give like 3 different reasons on why we win. One is that the overall thesis is that we're built for the founders. Therefore, when Jordan introduced us, we talked about 550 people. 400 of those are actually operating partners from operating companies with the expertise in every field imaginable that would be immediately helpful to our founders. I might be pretty good. I have some operating expertise, but hell, if you ask me who is the best sales leader to actually help go to PLG out into enterprise customers, I am sorry, I don't have that expertise. But our team has all of those expertise and network. So therefore, we're immediately incredibly helpful in terms of bringing that ability to them. 2 is that and this is a reason why we structured ourselves in the infra and app and American dynamism layer, where the expertise required to understand a mobile nuclear reactor or starship that goes back and forth and hauls things to moon is very, very different from understanding how many, what is the actual model biases and weights needed to build the best-in-class LLM, to what is the best social product to build and how do Gen Z operate. So we have structured ourselves in a way that we have incumbent expertise in each of these verticals to go after the opportunities, therefore completely differentiating ourselves from more generalized partnership. So for example, one of our infra leader, Martin Casado, he recently co-authored a white paper that comes out talking about the state-of-the-art, that actually pushes the state-of-the-art AI research. So when we are talking to researchers and people who are starting companies, our conversation isn't, why don't you pitch me the idea? Our conversation is, obviously, I know your idea. Hell, you actually built the product based on the code that I put out on GitHub. So let's just talk about how to build this company. And that's a completely different conversation from anything else.
Agreed. And that's why we invested with you. All right, I want to open it up for questions. Just one last quick hitter, which is, are there great tools that you would recommend our clients utilize or trial, either for business or for personal use? Is there great applications that are usable right now?
For sure.
And then,
I think so many are usable, and it all, of course, will depend on the customers and the end users' need. I think if you're in a creative industry, when you think about what to write, what to draw, what to, game plan and structure, how to actually put that all together, I think there are already so many tools available that are readily available to you at a fraction of the cost that would have cost you. For example, like Ideogram or Midjourney, if you wanted to put a product, out there and a product image out there, you can very easily create that. Hell, if you had product, pictures right now, you can use a product called Photo Room to immediately erase the background and change the lighting artificially of where it looks and actually do that right away. You also have on the engineering side, I think Copilot and ChatGPT are almost a must-have. It, for all of our companies, it genuinely improves productivity by at least 30 to 40% and the accuracy of the code base. So to the extent you have, technical folks operating in your company, that should be, a lot of, like, we actually bought company license and everyone uses it. So those are some of the things that I think are immediately great, useful. If you operate actual retail stores, you can actually, go to Suno.ai or our company Udio and just generate store musics. You don't need to go buy licenses and go do that right away. So the application of the technologies today and what's readily available already are actually very, very numerous.
thank you for that. Jordan, let's kick it back to you. And I know our clients and attendees here on the webinar have submitted a bunch of questions that you've been going through.
Awesome. And thank you both. Super, super interesting conversation. And as a reminder, can absolutely still submit questions through the Q&A mechanism, and we will get to as many of these as we can. So a bunch of these have come through, but I will just pick a few here. Bryan, what is your approach to managing the risks of AI-specific issues like data privacy, algorithm bias, or regulatory compliance?
Yeah. Okay, so all of these are very applicable and key things that we think about. When we think about, there's a company called Hagen that I can upload my face and it'll immediately create a talking avatar that is nearly indistinguishable from the current video. Now, always the question could be, well, what if it used for deepfakes? We invested in 11 Labs that creates, I just need to give 5-second snippet of my voice and it'll read the entire book of Hobbit with all the ums and ahs and intonations and everything. So then what if, somebody used that for deepfake purposes? I think that risk is certainly there. So I think a couple of the things that we tend to think about. One is that the moderation and thinking through the use cases become very important in our working with companies. When we're working with companies, we are very careful to say, hey, what are some of the use cases that we should avoid? Maybe we should ban and prohibit using any other political leader's voice or look or likeness for the product. Unless, why don't we ban that? And why don't we actually think about different layers of permission that we give to the users? And those are some of the thoughtful discussions we have. The other thing that we have as a company is that because it's becoming so important to understand the sort of data privacy and regulatory environment and be in sync with what's happening there, we actually are also building out, as part of our operating effort, to deeply understand and advise our customers, really the startups, on how the latest thinking on the regulatory regime and how that changes over time. So the two-part answer summary to your question is, one, we work with companies very deeply to understand what they're doing and help guide to the product decision. Two is, on the external side, we actually stood up an operating team that understand regulatory and legal framework really well and works very closely with the companies to bring about changes where needed.
Makes complete sense. Okay, how do you think AI will play out in mental health and well-being? I think this could mean a couple of things, but we'll let you answer that however you want.
That's so interesting. This is a funny topic, but there is already a paper, and it was published by Nature, I believe, or Science, one of those two, where the product that they compared it on is called Replica, and it's what you might call like a companionship app. You spin up an avatar of like an opposite gender or what have you, and you can actually have a conversation, develop a relationship. It remembers most of the detail around you. So it actually kind of feels like you're developing a real companionship with a person. Now, back to what we talked about, that might sound silly, right? That might sound like, oh, why would anybody need that? Like, just talk to your friend. Well, the truth is that the next generation, the Gen Z, on average, friends they trust and talk to drop from Gen X of 5 people to Gen Z of 1. So you're living in a world where they don't really have the same options as, as we might think about. And when compared on a statistically, significant study on nature, it was found that people who talked and had a replica companionship and people who didn't statistically showed less suicidal tendencies. And that's a dark, example, but if it's already making changes by simply interacting and talking to someone who seems to understand you, and that helps you lower the level of depression, I think that's already in play, right? And as we mentioned, there are multiple startups in the industry on the mental health side that's trying to ingest the right level of data, because as powerful as large language models are, if you think about how they're trained on the overall internet corpus. And what's on internet, frankly, there's a lot of trash. There's a lot of SEO feeders. There's a lot of dumb dialogues. It's not at the level of a thoughtful therapist talking to you, really trying to understand the issue. You can go and try with a ChatGPT. It'll sort of repeat, oh, like you must be having a hard time. Yeah, I just told you I have a hard time. Well, how do you think about that? What could you be doing? Like, yes, these are, at a surface level, right answers, but clinically, they're not the right sort of level of answers. So there are plenty of companies that are trying to achieve a much higher level of efficacy, if you will, by ingesting and working directly with the likes of transcripts of the actual leading mental therapists or health therapists and so forth. So I think what we're seeing now is we will see a deep sort of benefit in the mental health and well-being side in terms of product.
Super interesting. I'll ask one more here, and then James, I'll let you jump in and pick a few questions here. But how do you see AI developing over the next 10 years? And you talked a little bit about or mentioned AGI earlier. Now might be a good time to go a little bit deeper into that. Are you excited about it? Does it scare you? What changes are going to occur in the next decade plus?
The development has been so incredible in a couple years, like 1 year. So 10 years, I think we will certainly see an incredible development. Already what we're seeing is more and more people thinking through, what if AI actually understood the physical laws of nature? It still doesn't, right? Like when you think of as impressive as video generated are, it doesn't actually understand if I throw something, it should splatter on a wall or it should bounce back, right? And it's just guessing what that might be. What if it starts to understand the physical nature? What would that be? Because that's very interesting. When people ask like, oh, are you scared of AGI? Well, what is AGI? Because prior to this incredible development, AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, was defined as what Alan Turing coined as Turing test, i.e. if I'm actually talking to the computer and I can't tell the difference, you pass the test. That's already done. Like Turing test is irrelevant. There's already a product that was kind of fun where bot or not, and you go and have like a long form conversation. You guess if you're talking to a human or not. And you might think, oh, like it's taking longer to respond, or it had typo in the responses, must be human. No, bot. And so already the Turing test is failing. But then if you think about, Jordan, what I would call a coffee test. Can a bot go recognize a coffee bean, recognize a machine, put the beans in the said machine, boil the thing, find a mug, put it there, make coffee? Actually, no, we're pretty far away from that. So it depends on how we actually define AGI, but I think parts of it are already here. It's already showing greater mathematical language processing ability than most humans. If you make it take a doctor, licensing test, it does better than most people. So we're already sort of there in terms of some of it. It would be interesting to see how that applied to physical world would be in the next 10 years.
It's interesting too. You've got, Mustafa Suleyman talked about this. We had the opportunity to interview him and recommend his book for anyone interested. This concept of the modern Turing test, where, can you give an AI 10 grand and have it turn it into 100 grand, right? And do that reliably. And so it's interesting to hear a perspective. There's so many different ways to now define what it means to be AGI.
The bar keeps on moving.
There's now a plethora of startups. There's so many AI startups. How are you separating, the noise from what you view to be an incredible company that you want to invest in?
Yeah, there are a great amount of people coming out and trying to start companies. I think every day, I think we see about 10 companies just in a group of 3. So across the firm, probably we see 100 new companies a day. How do we actually make decisions is that top down and bottoms up. On top down basis, we have certain thesis, right? And the creativity space, like content creation and editing, well, those are different by modalities. So what is the best in class in audio versus video versus 3D versus world? And then, in each of those, who are the people building? And we map it out literally. And when we map it out, they're typically 10 plus people. So there's a couple of things happening there. One, if 10 really smart people are building something, that's a space. That's a space. 2, of that, who's actually leading in that position? So we would actually try to meet every one of those and pick a company to back that we believe the founder has the velocity needed, and hopefully the product already has some traction and we can see it actually being adopted more and more. Inertia is a powerful force. So, one of the ways we think about it is, look, like if the thing has already traction, the default setting is that it'll continue to sort of roll and get the momentum. Now, the thing there, Jordan and James, is that we're in a venture business, and venture business return money by backing like 1 or 2 outsized winner. So a lot of these may or may not pan out, but the sin of omission is very, very great in that if we think content creation is a very large category, if we think video is actually a large category, which I do, it sort of behooves us to not invest in that category in a fear of losing. The most important thing there is absolutely picking the winner. So if people sat around the table, 15, 20 years ago and say, you know what, like these on-demand car driving is going to be really big. Okay, you meet all the companies, whether it's Zoom Ride or Uber or Lyft at a very early stage. There are like 10 of them, or maybe even more. If you pick, Zoom Ride over Lyft or Uber, you are making no money. So the important thing that we keep in mind is that, one, is this the right space? And that's beneficial if you get the space right. But the much more important thing is you get the wrong player to back. So we put a tremendous emphasis on, 1, first defining the space, and 2, really thinking through who the winner might be. And the benefit there of being a16z is that because of the name value and the network and the people we have on our platform, we actually, when we want to, we actually can meet all 10 people versus needing to meet 4 and selecting one of the 4 as hopefully they're the best, but who knows?
Yeah.
We actually get the benefit of actually canvassing the entire industry and then picking what we believe to be the best probable winner.
Makes
Very
sense.
helpful.
Well, I think we are about out of time. One last question that was asked that I'll answer quickly, which is how we at Cresset think about investing in venture. And so, we love Andreesen Horowitz, and we think they're going to do very, very well. We have a lot of faith in Bryan and the other team of 500 plus. But, like Bryan diversifies his fund's investment strategy through multiple companies, we like to do the same with, 15 to 20 funds in our portfolio. And so we are thrilled, as I mentioned earlier, to have Andreesen Horowitz in both our first fund, which is now closed, and our second fund, which we just launched. And we'll end up having, another 15 to 20 great names alongside them, and view that as the right way to approach the asset class from our perspective. And so with that, I think we will wrap. I want to thank Bryan and James for the time here. If you have any additional questions about venture capital, about artificial intelligence, about what we're up to or Andreessen's up to, always feel free to reach out, and we will happily help. But thank you all for attending today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Jordan and
Thank
James.
you.
Thank you.